From its very opening lines, our Bible assumes that the reader has a relationship with God. Now, I don't mean that it can't be read or even understood by a non-believer, because obviously it can. But I mean that a person who comes to it expecting it to read like a textbook, like a history or a science book, is going to be looking for things that aren't there, asking questions of the text that the text is not prepared to answer. But a person who understands or is interested in understanding or is open to becoming interested in understanding their relationship with God will be asking different questions and finding different answers. Here's what I mean. A skeptic or a critic will look at the book of Genesis and say, come on, right? Come on, you're telling me the whole thing was created in 7 days, right? That all these mountains and oceans and trees and flowers and cows and cockroaches on humans and humans in all our complexity in 7 days? No way, you know? But to the person who understands or is interested in understanding their relationship with God, they might look at that story and say, well, time is not the important part, right? This is not a story about literal times and literal bugs. This is a story about us being created by God. And therefore, our relationship with God is one of creator and created, not two buddies on a road trip. Right? Sometimes we mix that up. Right relationship with God looks like this. The creature is dependent on the Creator. Right? This isn't that God doesn't love us or care about us, or watch out for us or take care of us, or hasn't created an eternal future for us. It's that we are not God. We are created by God. And I think that's important to remember. Now, move a little bit forward in the book of Genesis, and you get to today's story. A super familiar story. Is there anyone here who has not heard the story of Adam and Eve and the garden? And who else is in the garden? The snake! Yeah? The snake. I'm going to move this. It's a little too loud. Okay, and the snake. A talking snake, if you will. Okay? A talking snake. What language do you suppose that snake talked, you know? Hebrew? English? I don't know. Did he just point? Apple? You know, I don't know. A talking snake. So again, the person who's looking for science or history lessons in the Bible checks out at this point, and I don't blame them, because snakes don't talk. Okay? But this story is not about a talking snake. This story is about Adam and Eve as created humanity. In other words, us. How, from the very beginning, we have been struggling with the nature of our relationship with God. This is a story about how we know, but often forget, that God is God and we are not God. Our relationship begins there, and whenever we are stuck, either as a people or as an individual, it is helpful to go back to that place. God is God, and we are not God. Whenever you get stuck in life, just go back there and start again. I promise you. Okay. God is God. We are created by God and beloved of God, free to do about anything in this world except understand ourselves as God. We can do about anything else. That's the whole story of the garden. Go have fun, do anything you want, but just remember you're not God. Okay. So, from that story, all other stories unfold in Holy Scripture. Story after story after story. As you know, some are actually historical and meant to be taken as such. Some actually are literal. Many are poetic. Many are fanciful. And much to our embarrassment as modern people, there are more stories with talking animals. Famously, Balaam's donkey, yes? But nearly every story, at its core, has a single purpose: to engage us in trying to understand our relationship with God and with the others that live around us, who are also created by and in relationship with that same God. Read this way, our Bible literally teems with trivia and big ideas and life lessons and riddles and challenges and even answers to some of life's greatest questions. Read this way, with a desire to understand our relationship with God, our Bible becomes not optional but essential reading if our relationship with God is going to go anywhere at all. So what? You might say, and I wouldn't blame you. So what, Mark? What does all this have to do with you or with us? So this. Over the next 5 Sundays, our gospel readings from Matthew and John are going to be a series of 5 different disconnected stories. Not a continual reading like we've been having, but each week we will have a new scene where we will be introduced to a new character who interacts with Jesus. And the point of the stories is not to learn history or science, but each character we meet and each story we hear will challenge our understanding of who God is and who we are in relationship to God. So, today's story is a familiar one. I'm sure you know it. Jesus has just been baptized by John in the Jordan with the Holy Spirit descending and God's voice declaring that Jesus is God's Son, in whom God is well pleased. That's Matthew chapter 3. And we are in Matthew chapter 4. Immediately following the baptism, where Jesus is declared as the Son of God. And now the reader, having witnessed that baptism in the text, if they are paying attention, is saying, so what does this well-pleased Son of God mean to me? Why should I care? What will he do? What will he act like? What difference will he make in my life or in the world? And our first glimpse of the answer comes in the story of his temptation, which immediately follows his baptism. Okay. So he finishes up with his baptism, and immediately then 40 days he fasts in preparation. Now, 40 days, right? Ring any bells? Echoes of Moses, yeah? So our ears are supposed to perk up here. 40 days. And then, after 40 days of preparation, he is challenged by the tempter. Now, can I stop here for a moment and ask you, in fact, beg you, to do something for me? Can you forget about half of what you think you know about the devil? Or Satan, or the evil one? Because so much of what we think we know is not in the Bible. It comes from classic literature, right? Milton, yeah? Dante? Absolutely. This story is not about a red guy with a pitchfork any more than the garden story is about a talking snake. It is about how the creatures of God are always and everywhere tempted to forget or set aside or reimagine the way that we see ourselves in relationship with God and with the world, which always gets us in trouble. I'm not saying that there's not evil in the world. Of course there is. I'm not saying the Bible doesn't talk about the devil. Of course it does. But I'm saying that if that's what we focus on in these stories, we're missing the point. The character that we meet in this temptation story is called the accuser, who says the same thing to the Son of God as the snake said to the first creatures of God, which is the same thing he says to us all the time, which is this: did God really say that? Are you sure that you can't do that? Are you sure that you can do that? You seem pretty good on your own. What do you even need God for? Who is God anyway compared to you? You're pretty good by yourself. What do you need God for? Now, I promise you, you may not think of it in those terms, but those questions are at the core of the faith life of any person who follows Jesus and through Jesus is in relationship with God. Did God really say that? Go on. You don't need God. Not today. Not right now. Am I the only one who has these voices? Am I the only one? No. Every day we hear this. You don't need God. And that is the biggest lie. And how we respond to it is our first and biggest challenge. Jesus defeats the tempter by rejecting the premise that he is bigger than God and that the world is more important than faithful submission to God's purposes. Jesus demonstrates that it is God who sustains. It is God who empowers. It is God that calls forth life, and not the sun and not the creatures. And then, what does the tempter do? He slithers away. He slinks off. And what we learn from that is that we too are most faithful and frankly most successful when we put ourselves in the right order with God and with the world. When we right-size our egos. When we realize that for anything at all that matters, we are completely and utterly dependent on God. I want you to hear me. When we realize that for anything at all that really matters, we are completely and utterly dependent on God. It turns out that this is the key to Jesus' relationship with God. Can it be any different for us? So come back next week and meet Nicodemus, who visits in the dark of night and is shocked to learn the mystery of being reborn in God.